You know, for decades, there's been this one narrow strip of water that basically holds the entire global economy hostage. We're talking about the Strait of Hormuz. It is, without a doubt, the world's most critical energy choke point. And the search for a workaround, for some kind of escape hatch, has been a massive strategic obsession. So let's dive into this wild story of pipelines, megaprojects, and high-stakes geopolitical chess.
So if you want to get a sense of just how desperate the situation is, get a load of this idea that went viral not too long ago. Now, it started as satire, okay? But the fact that anyone was even talking about, quote, thermonuclear landscaping just shows you the insane scale of the problem and the enormous stakes involved in finding an alternative to Hormuz.
Okay, so that gives you an idea of the desperation, right? But why? Why all the fuss? Let's break down exactly what makes this tiny 21-mile wide passage so incredibly important to all of us.
Just take a look at this map. Every single tanker that leaves the Persian Gulf, we're talking from Iraq, Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, and most of the oil from Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Iran, every one of them has to squeeze through this one tiny gap to get to the open ocean. There is literally no other way out by sea.
And this is the number that keeps energy traders and world leaders up at night. About 21% of the entire world's daily oil consumption passes right through this one choke point. So any disruption, even a small one, let alone a full closure, well, that's not just a regional problem. That becomes an immediate, full-blown global crisis.
So here's the crucial point. If you can't be 100% sure that Sealand is going to stay open, you have to figure out a way to go around it. And what's the most logical answer? Well, giant pipelines.
And here they are. These are basically the two most important insurance policies in the energy world. You can see right here Saudi Arabia's massive east-west pipeline. They call it the Petroline. It just cuts straight across the entire peninsula to the Red Sea. And over here, the UAE's pipeline 80 COP gives them a vital shortcut from their oil fields to the port of Fujairah, which is safely outside the strait.
And when you look at the hard numbers, that's where the story gets really interesting. The Saudi line is the absolute heavyweight, capable of moving a jaw-dropping 7 million barrels a day by itself. The UAE and Iraq also add a lot of capacity to that. So you see, these aren't just little side projects. They are massive, massive pieces of infrastructure built for one single purpose: get around Hormuz.
But here's the thing. Pipelines move the oil, right? But they don't move the enormous tankers that carry it. And that has led to some much grander and frankly far more difficult ideas over the years. It's a question that just keeps coming up, and it has for decades. I mean, it makes sense, right? If we can build the Suez Canal or the Panama Canal, why can't we just carve a whole new waterway from the Gulf to the Indian Ocean and just solve the problem for good?
Well, for starters, there's the absolutely staggering price tag. One proposal from back in 2008 put the estimated cost at $200 billion. But believe it or not, that jaw-dropping number, that's not even the real problem.
And this slide right here shows you exactly why this is still just a dream. You'd have to literally blast a channel through a 2,000-meter-high mountain range. A mountain range, by the way, that engineers later found out is riddled with these enormous cathedral-sized caves inside. It's just hollow. And before you could even start digging, you'd have to build your own roads, your own power plants, and your own water supplies right there on site. It's less of an engineering project and more like terraforming a planet.
Okay, so if the Grand Canal is pretty much a fantasy, we have to go back to the pipelines. But this is where the picture gets a lot more complicated, because even the solutions that we do have, well, they've got some very, very serious limits.
This chart really puts it all into perspective. On an average day, the Strait of Hormuz sees about 21 million barrels of oil move through. Now, if you add up the absolute maximal capacity of every single bypass pipeline in the region, you get to about 11 million. That means even if every single bypass is running at 100%, full tilt, you still can't even move half the oil.
And here's the other big problem. You don't always get rid of risk. You just move it somewhere else. So Saudi Arabia's main pipeline gets their oil out of the Persian Gulf? Sure, but it dumps it into the Red Sea. Now to get to Europe, that same oil has to pass through another choke point, the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, right next to Yemen. You've essentially just traded one vulnerability for a brand new one. But look, if the situation for oil is complicated, the reality for another critical energy source is far, far worse. See, you can pump oil across a continent in a pipeline. You can't really do that with liquefied natural gas, or LNG. For LNG, you have to chill it down to minus 162 degrees Celsius, which turns it into a liquid. And then you have to load it onto these highly specialized, very expensive ships. There are no major LNG bypass pipelines.
And that simple fact leads to this pretty stark reality. Just look at this map. Global LNG superpowers, countries like Qatar and the UAE, have all of their export terminals located inside the Persian Gulf. They are, for all practical purposes, geographically trapped. If the Strait of Hormuz closes, their #1 export basically grinds to a halt.
So let's just pull this all together. What are the big takeaways here? First, Hormuz is still the absolute king, the linchpin of it all. The pipeline workarounds, they're super important, but they're only a partial fix. They can't handle all the volume, and they often just create new problems. Those mega projects like canals, they're still science fiction for now. And maybe the most critical point of all, for the huge and growing LNG market, there is effectively no escape hatch at all.
Which leaves us with this one really difficult question. After all these decades of planning and billions of dollars spent on alternatives, is the simple, stark truth that there is just no real substitute for the Strait of Hormuz, and that protecting this one narrow channel has to remain the ultimate priority, no matter what the cost.